was just backstage, and you'll never believe what I saw. The National FFA President, Luke O'Leary, was eating a nice, big, old, juicy, medium rare steak in preparation for his keynote.
Well, that's pretty cool and all, but Luke just happens to be from California, which is the #1 dairy-producing state in the nation. With a background like that, this ought to be a dairy good speech.
That's fair, that's fair. Well, you may have gotten me on that one, Jody, but without further ado, Iowa FFA, please help me and welcome to the stage your National FFA President, Mr. Luke O'Leary.
Iowa FFA. How we doing, Iowa FFA? It is so good to be here. I've had an incredible past few days. So incredible that I've been seeing some incredible dance moves, actually, throughout the session, throughout all of the halls even. If we think we got the best dance moves in here, let me get a, oh yeah. If we think we could bring some great dance moves to Hilton right now, let me get a, oh yeah. Now, I actually need 3 volunteers right here from the front that thinks they got some good dance moves. 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3, right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 people come to these stairs right here from the front. 3 people. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our volunteers a round of applause. We got 3 volunteers. We'll go center stage so everyone can see us nice and well. All right, what's your name? Natasha. Let's give a round of applause for Natasha. What's your name, man? Aaron. We got Aaron. Round of applause for Aaron. And we have Anna. Round of applause for Anna. Now we gotta see your best dance moves. Crowd, let's give them some crazy applause. AV, if we can get some music just like we had before, let's see some crazy dance moves. All right, what you got? Oh, oh, oh! We got 10 seconds, let's count them down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's give our volunteers a round of applause. You guys can head off. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Woo! I'm feeling good. Are we feeling good in here? You know, that feeling that we're feeling right now, hold on to that. That's joy right now, just a little bit. Joy makes me think of some of my best days ever. We all know what that best day ever feeling feels like, right? When you wake up and you know that today is going to be good. One of my best days ever, it looks something like this. I wake up in the morning, real early, but it feels like I just got like 10 hours of sleep. The sun is just peeking up behind the hills by my house. I am feeling good today. I go over to my truck, I grab my dog Moose, who's a Great Pyrenees, which is like a basically giant white polar bear, like that tall, that big. Moose jumps in the back of my pickup truck as we head to the beach, which is about 10 minutes from my house. We get to the beach on the beautiful central coast of California where I'm from. We're going on a jog, just, you know, me and my best friend Moose on the beach, beautiful skyline. It gets a little bit warmer that day, and so we're jumping in and out of the waves, having a good time. Today is just the best. Then I see some friends in the distance. We go hang out with my friends. After hanging out for a while, it's time to head home with Moose. So Moose and I jump back into my car. As we're driving back home to our house, we hear my favorite song ever. So we crank it up, and I put my hands up to play you my song, The Butterflies Fly Away. Not in my, no? Okay. Apparently Miley Cyrus isn't a big fan of Iowa, or I was not a big fan of Miley. I don't know, but whatever your best day ever is, picture that. Picture that best day ever. Now feel that. That feeling that feeling is joy. Now, I am really passionate about joy. It's something that over the past few months, as I began thinking about what message I wanted to share with the FFA members that I came in contact with throughout our country, I couldn't get out of my head. Joy, something that is so powerful to hold on to have in our hearts. I began to do a little bit of research. So, of course, I first turned to one of my most trusted advisors, my best friend, Google, right? Yeah, so I pull out my phone, I type in definition of joy. When you type in definition of joy, up pops the definition. Joy is the feeling of pleasure and happiness. Okay, makes sense, right? That sounds right. I noticed then below that there was another button that said word origins, translations, and more. So naturally, I clicked on it. Up popped a graph. Now on this graph, the line started really, really high at one side at the start of the graph. As it went across the graph, the line dipped, and ended at the bottom at the end of the graph. After looking just a little closer, I noticed that this graph represented the use of the word joy over time. You see, the start of the graph was about 100 years ago, when the word joy was used really frequently. Halfway through that graph, when it plummeted to the bottom, was about 50 years ago, leading us at the end of the graph to today, where the word joy just isn't really heard that often. Now, this could be attributed to a lot of different factors. Maybe it's just the change of language. We don't use the word joy, but we use other words, like happiness. But happiness and joy are very different things. And I think that many of us would agree that it's not just the word joy that has been lacking in our world today, it's the feeling of joy that has somewhat been lacking throughout our world. Too often when we pull up our phones to see news headlines or get the newspaper or watch the news, we see tragedies, disasters, and we don't see much joy around us. Why? Joy is good for us, so good for us. In fact, in my research, I found that joy is actually healthy. Now, we all love the feeling of joy. There's no doubt about that. But joy actually is good for our bodies, for our physical health. Check this out. There's been like over 150 different studies, research studies, that have shown that joy affects the physical body. Joy can pump our blood better. It gets more oxygen to our lungs. It even burns some major calories and helps our memory function in our brain. Joy affects our bodies. Joy makes us healthy. It changes us at a cellular chemical level. It looks like we can literally be joy. But how? How do we become an emotion, a feeling? It's hard to hold on to joy. I get it. You're probably thinking about right now, Luke, I get it, I agree, joy is good, but it's not easy. And I agree. Life is hard, really hard sometimes. On the good days, those best days ever, like when I get to go run on the beach with my dog Moose, it's easy to find joy. What about those harder days? Those days, we need to work a little bit harder to find joy. But I'm telling you, it's possible. I know this because of a few friends who I've met that have taught me that joy is possible in every situation that we may be facing. It makes me think of one friend of mine that I met at a leadership camp back in my home state of California. You see, Sophia was her name, and she had bright orange hair, freckles all over her face, and a bright smile that complemented her hair perfectly. Sophia exuded joy. Just standing away from her across the room, you could tell that Sophia carried joy in her heart. Sophia was joy. I met her while standing in a big group circle playing volleyball at this leadership camp. Now, we were passing the volleyball from one person to the other, bouncing across the circle, Sophia standing right next to me. As the ball jumped from person to person, finally the volleyball came soaring through the air, straight towards Sophia. I watched her standing next to me, a little scared, a little nervous, but excited that the ball was headed her way. She got her arms ready, the ball was coming, it came towards her, and as she passed the volleyball, she burst out with some giggling and pure joy. Now, standing next to her, I was a little caught off guard why someone was so excited just to pass a volleyball across a group circle. So I turned to her and I said, hey, that was a nice pass. You seem pretty happy about it. She looks back at me and she said, yeah, you know, that's actually the first time that I've passed a volleyball, or really the first time that I've played any sport in years. Even more caught off guard, standing next to her, I decided to ask her a little more about her story later that evening. You see, Sophia shared with me that she's been facing some really hard health challenges. This was Sophia's story. When she was 11, she was in a snow skiing accident, one that left her with a twisted knee and some pretty bad head trauma. And that began to persist. Even after she headed home and doctors said that she would heal and get better, she wasn't. Day after day, week after week, month after month, Sophia faced chronic pain. She began to see her health deteriorate. After numerous doctor appointments and tests, finally, Sophia was diagnosed with something she never thought she ever had to deal with. Sophia has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and fibromyalgia, two health issues that constantly affect her, where her joints will constantly get dislocated and it's easy for her to hurt herself. Some days are better than others, but on some of her tougher days, she can hardly walk across the room. The whole time Sophia shared her story with me, you wouldn't think it would be coming from someone who dealt with these challenges. The entire time, Sophia carried a soft smile on her face and was happy about the things that she could do, not focusing on what she couldn't. She was still excited to share with me that despite her health challenges of sometimes not even being able to walk, Sophia still was excited to be a part of the musical theater productions at her school, show livestock at her county fair, and be a chapter officer in her home FFA chapter of Mercy Red Bluff. Sophia focused on what she could do. Sophia focused on hope for a brighter future beyond her current situation. Through hope, Sophia chose joy. She became joy and was able to even bring joy to those around her, people like me that felt it. Now, it's not just Sophia, it's not just those with health challenges when it's hard to find joy. There are some other situations too. It reminds me of a friend of mine, Nick. I met Nick while I was serving as a state officer when I did a chapter visit in his hometown of Manteca. As I went to his house, the house I'd be staying at for the night, I met Nick as he had open arms, ready to embrace me and welcome me to the house that I was staying at. However, later that night, I learned that that house wasn't Nick's or his family's house at all. In fact, the house was just a friend of Nick's. I learned from Nick his story and his background. When Nick was 11 years old, his brother passed away in a car accident. However, his challenges began far earlier than that, when throughout elementary school, his parents struggled with alcohol abuse and substance addiction. Because of that, Nick practically raised himself, and suddenly at 11 years old, he lost one of his only family members that he could count on. A few years passed, and eventually his parents kicked Nick out of the house. For 2 days, Nick, a sophomore in high school, lived in a park just a couple blocks down from his house. After sleeping in this park for 2 nights, finally, a friend of his at school recognized his situation and invited him to live at their home, the home that I was lucky enough to stay at that night. Many people in Nick's situation might live with bitterness, might live with regret, might live with hatred of what has happened to him. But instead, Nick is generous. When I showed up to this home, one that wasn't even his, he showed me a gift basket that he gave to me. One that was full of supplies like toothpaste and deodorant and other things that I could use while traveling on the road as a state officer. Nick chose to look past his challenges through family, choosing to be generous to those around him. Because of that, Nick found joy. Both Sophia and Nick faced tremendous challenges in their lives, but still, they were able to find joy. Now, they didn't do this to ignore the reality of their situation. They recognized that what they faced was tough, that it was hard, that it wasn't going to be easy. But they chose to be joy in the world around them, to remind themselves that their life, it had worth and value despite the hardships that they faced. See, across this world, across this country, the state of Iowa, in this very room, there are people who struggle. Now, I don't assume to know what you're going through, but I know that we all face challenges. There are some who are struggling with hunger, others who are struggling with poverty, those who have been excluded based on their race, gender, or orientation, those who feel like they have nothing. We've all felt moments of pain. Some have more than others. It is our challenge that when we face a hardship in front of us, we decide to look further beyond our current situation and find joy beyond it. Joy for the future. For those of us who maybe aren't facing as much of those challenges, we still have a challenge ahead of us. That challenge is to use the joy that we have to bring it to the lives of others. Joy is good for us, and it is possible. The world around us is constantly in need of joy. Everywhere we look, there are hurting people that could use your joy to bring up their day. Whether it's the best day ever, or maybe not a very good one, we all could use joy in our lives. Now, some of the messages that we share with others often are the ones that we need to learn ourselves the most. I've realized this the past few months. See, I began writing this speech all the way back in January, right about the time that I had a pretty big health scare. Back in January, I had a seizure that resulted in a fractured vertebrae that I still struggle with to this day. Not only that, but a few months later, I found out that I was diagnosed with a mild form of epilepsy. This frustrated me. This upset me. Getting the news that I was going to struggle with health issues at the start of my year of national office, the start of a year that should be my best year ever, and suddenly I have to stay home? I have to struggle with this? It wasn't until the next time that I gave this exact speech at another conference in North Carolina that I realized, Luke, learn from your speech. Learn from Sophia and Nick. If they can find joy in their situations, surely I can find joy in mine. Finding joy that there's hope for a brighter future beyond our current situations. If there's one thing I know, it's this. Joy is good for us, and joy is possible. Be joy, Iowa FFA, because the world needs joy. But you, each of you in this room, you deserve it. Thank you so much, Iowa FFA, for welcoming me to your home.
Clap along.